Good morning, Bexleyheath Academy, and it is so great to be giving this assembly to you this morning, knowing that you are all on site and in your classrooms. So a huge welcome back to Year 11, 12 and 13. It is brilliant to have you all watching today, and happy International Women's Day. Today, I am absolutely delighted to tell you that we are going to be joined by a guest speaker. We're going to be joined by Gifty Enright, who is an author and an international speaker on women and workplace wellbeing. She's spoken at Wells Fargo Bank, Oxford University, Citibank, IBM, BP, TEDx Women, just to name a few. And Gifty's latest book, Octopus on a Treadmill, Women, Success, Health, Happiness, has been widely praised, including by Joanna Lumley. Her articles have regularly been published by international outlets such as Thrive, Global, and been featured in Accounting and Business. And she was nominated one of 2020's top 101 global influencers in employer engagement and wellbeing. So we are absolutely delighted to have her joining us today for the assembly, and cannot wait for this talk from her. Now, today, if you've got any questions, then your teachers will be able to post those and put them into the chat facility for us. So there is a Google form that has been sent out, and please ask your teachers if you've got any questions, and they will be able to submit those into the Google form, and they will come through to me so we can answer those questions for you at the end. So there'll be the availability to do that. And I hope you really enjoy it. If you've got a study period now, then I've sent you out an email so you can do the Google form yourself. I'm going to hand over now to Gifty, and I hope you really enjoyed today's assembly.
Miss Doyle. Now, Bexleyheath, thanks ever so much for having me. I am very thrilled to be here. When Ms. Doyle phoned me and asked me if I would come and speak, I had to say yes, because my husband was actually born in Bexleyheath, so Bexleyheath is very close to my heart. Now, I have got a 16-year-old son, and when I said to him I was speaking at a school, because this is the first time I'm actually speaking at a school. Normally I speak at workplaces. And I said, I'm speaking at a school assembly today. Any tips? And he said to me, Mom, you know, nobody ever listens to those. So I said, well, I think in Bexleyheath, they're going to listen to me. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I hope I can have your full attention for the next 30 minutes or so. So it is International Women's Day today. And just so that I can prove to you that International Women's Day affects everybody, I just want a little exercise here. So the teachers in your classroom, I hope you can help me do this. Now, hopefully you're all sitting. I want you to stand if you have a daughter, please. So I'm thinking it will just be the male teachers, some of the male teachers standing at this point. Okay. And now I want you to stand if you have a wife. So this is just for the men and the boys, by the way, this exercise. So no girls included, no women included, just the men and the boys, please. If you have a daughter and you have a wife, please stand. Okay, so next one, if you have a sister, please stand. Okay, and last but not the least, if you ever had a mother, please stand. Now, unfortunately, I'm not at assembly, I'm not in your classroom, so I can't see you, but I think every boy is standing and every male teacher should be standing at this point. And the point of this exercise is to prove to you that you have the ability to support women and touch their lives, and that women's issues affect you just as equally as they affect women. Okay, you may sit now. Thank you. Thank you for participating in this exercise. I couldn't see you, but I am confident that you did what you were supposed to do. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do here is to make sure that I give you a bit of a history lesson. And I know you guys, you take lots of lessons and you don't want yet another lesson on International Women's Day, but this is going to be very short. So the history lesson I'm going to give you is the history of International Women's Day and when it started. And it goes as far back as 1909 in New York, when they had a Women's Day. And then there's been different iterations of it. And then in 1977, it was adopted by the United Nations, and then it was made into International Women's Day. So this is how long International Women's Day in some form or variation has been going. And this year, in 2020, the theme is choose to challenge. So why choose to challenge? Now, I will go into that in a moment, but for the objective of today's session, what I want us to be clear on is we will be focusing on women, but also on any form of otherness. And then the objective is to educate the boys and the men on gender biases so that they can be good allies to the women and support the girls as well. And also to educate you girls and the women on how to be aware of the traps that women and girls fall into, how to avoid the traps, and how to help each other. So to do this, we have to be able to challenge. And so let's go and look at the importance of challenging. Why do we need to be able to challenge? It is important because today's norms were yesterday's challenges, believe it or not. And most inventions are a result of disruptions. So, I mean, I don't know, some of you might be quite young and don't remember things like MySpace, but now social media is the norm. And I remember years ago, one of the founders of Twitter having a tough time explaining on Newsnight to the anchor of Newsnight what Twitter was about. Nobody could wrap their heads around it, but now it is the norm and everybody uses Twitter. So, and that again was a result of a disruption, somebody challenging the status quo. And also being able to challenge is important for progress. Things that we take for granted now, especially for you guys, your parents would have had to fight for it to be accepted into the status quo. So a challenged society is an alert society. And so being able to challenge is very important for us and for our development. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the gender parity and why, again, gender parity is important for us. Now, for some reason, I can't get my thing to go on full screen. I'm sure one of you wizards would have done it for me. But anyway, not being able to go on full screen, I just need to plow through that. Hopefully you can see my screen fully, even though it's not on full screen. But talking about gender parity, here, the World Economic Forum is actually estimating that if we carry on the way we're carrying on, it's going to take us 99.5 years to be able to get to gender parity. And gender parity is where we have the equal representation of women economically, in politics, in the workplace, wherever it is the women want to be engaged. Now, how can we hit gender parity and how can we make sure that this happens? And basically, we challenge the World Economic Forum's prediction of 99.5 years, because it would be really, really sad if in my lifetime I don't see it. And, most of us are dead by the time it happens. So we need to be able to challenge this and not wait for another 100 years. And the ways to do this is to celebrate women's achievements. Again, I'm not in your classrooms with you, so I can't do this. But normally I'll ask people to put up their hands and tell me, think of a genius. Just tell me a genius. And 99.9% of the time, people will tell me Einstein. It's always a male genius that comes to mind, right? It's nobody ever is saying Marie Curie. And without her, we wouldn't be having the X-ray. Now, I found out, I think it was maybe a month ago, about this woman, Hedy Lamarr. Apparently, she was the one that invented the Wi-Fi. Would you believe it? Now, there was my gender bias right there, because I thought Wi-Fi, IT has got to be a male, and no, it's a woman. So we have to be able to celebrate women's achievements and have women's achievements come to the forefront, because we all know now without Wi-Fi, homeschooling is not possible, right? We just won't be able in COVID to live the way we've been living without the Wi-Fi. And literally, if the Wi-Fi goes down, it's like the world has come to an end these days. And it was a woman that made this possible. And so we have to celebrate women's achievement. And then also we have to be able to raise awareness against bias. And I will be delving deeper into this. But not only raise the awareness, but to be able to take action for equality. And taking action for equality means that we can proactively challenge the status quo. So when I talked about the importance of challenging, these are some of the tools I'm going to give you in terms of raising your awareness against gender bias and enabling you to be able to take action for equality and proactively challenge the status quo. All right, so I'm going to tell you about the 6 biases, the 6 different biases that we face. But so unfortunately, because I can't go on my full screen, I can't let these pop up individually. So you get to see all 6 of them at once. But there you go. There's 6 of them. There is performance bias. There's attribution bias, likability bias, affinity bias, intersectionality, and maternal. So I'm going to go into the first 5. The last one, the 6th, I'm reliably informed that I'm speaking to 11 to 13-year-olds, something like that. So you guys, that is not going to be pertinent for a while yet, because you have to finish your education and all that before eventually work and then decide to settle down. So hopefully the maternal bit might be a few years away for you yet. So I'm not going to delve into that, but I'm going to talk about the performance, attribution, likability, affinity, and intersectionality. So performance bias. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Mozart. I'm sure those of you studying music would have heard of Mozart, but how many of you heard of Mozart's sister? He had a sister called Maria Anna. Now, I never heard about her, although I knew of Mozart for a long time. Now, why did she fall off the radar? Why did she disappear? Because she got caught in what is the performance bias. So what is the performance bias? Basically, as a society, what we do is we overestimate men's performance and we underestimate women's performance. And it's the same for boys and girls. And there's a bit of history behind that, because, you know, the workplace was typically a woman's place was in the home to start with historically, and the men were the ones going out to work. So when we had women's liberation and women came marching into the workplace, the men were already established, perhaps. So that, again, is a bit of a history there. But it still is so deeply ingrained in the way we operate, in the way we parent, in the way we teach, in the way we relate to our peers, that women are judged on their performance to date and men are judged on their potential. So they don't even have to prove they can do it. They just have to turn up and they're given the benefit of the doubt, whereas women have to earn the right to be at the table. So this is where it becomes a bit of an unlevel playing field. So what happens is, because men are automatically given this credit and women are having to earn it, it impacts on their confidence, it impacts on the confidence of the girls, and they stop pushing themselves out there. And this costs society trillions, I mean the global economy, trillions of money by not having capable women out there contributing their talent to the world, rather than being siphoned off at the age of 18 in Mozart's sister's case to go and just be a full-time mother and nothing else. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a full-time mother. So a lot of good, influential people had full-time mothers at home nurturing their talents. But the woman has got to have a choice. And their only choice should not be that they should just go and be a full-time mother. The choice should be open to them to do wherever their capabilities are pulling them to, for them to go and do it, rather than being just determined by their biology. So a scenario I'm giving you here, when you see performance bias at play, when a friend confides in you that he doesn't like being paired up with girls for maths or science, or even a girl telling another girl she doesn't like being paired up with girls for that because the boys do better, or there is the assumption the boys are naturally better at maths and science. This, of course, is rubbish. It's just where your affinity is and where you want to put the effort, because frankly, you can excel at wherever you put your effort, and that is the bottom line. So if ever you come across a scenario like that, the challenge for you and what you can say, whoever is saying it, is ask them, what makes you say that? And of all these gender biases, this one phrase you can use for all of them. I will give you different ones as well, but this one phrase, what makes you say that? It helps people stop in their tracks and start thinking, okay, hang on, why am I saying that? Because sometimes they haven't stopped to think about it. They're just doing it because that is what society does. They're doing it because they have unconsciously absorbed these behavior patterns. But if they're challenged to make them think, why do you say that? Then they evaluate the situation, they think about it, and then they realize that that assumption that, you know, girls are not good at science or maths is just not true. It is just an assumption. And so that is a way, whenever you come across somebody suffering under the performance bias, to say, what makes you say that? So the next one I'm going to talk about is the attribution bias. And again, this is a function of the performance bias, where women and girls are credited less for their accomplishments, they're blamed more for mistakes, and their contribution is valued less. And so the way this plays out, and I was quite surprised when I came across this study. In one study, men interrupted women nearly 3 times as often as they interrupted other men. And get this, women fell into the same pattern. This is unforgivable. We're doing this to ourselves. So, and it's just because their contribution is less valued, because there is that implicit bias that the men know what they're talking about, etc., etc. So the way, again, you can help support this, if someone says something clever, and especially with you kids in the group, you know, normally the unpopular or the shy kid there says something and everybody pretends, well, they weren't even listening to start with, but a more popular kid, somebody who is more, I suppose, assertive, says it and everybody jumps on it and, oh, yes, that's a good idea. Now, it's not like the other kid didn't say it to start with. Maybe they said it in a softer way, or maybe in not a confident way. And so the way you can help support that other person, especially if it's a girl, is to remind everyone that the idea originated from that soft-spoken person in the corner. And by doing that, what you're doing is, again, challenging the status quo. You are bolstering up that perhaps not so confident kid. So next time they will speak up because you give them the platform. So, and this is where the men and the boys, this education is important, because a lot of the time, especially when you get to the workplace, they are the ones with the power. Right, so they are the power brokers. So if they notice somebody who's quieter in a corner make a quiet suggestion, and they clear the decks for them and give them the platform to speak up, other people pay attention. Alrighty, so the next one I want to talk about is the likability bias. And so this is where I call it the double bind for women. So women and girls have to walk a tightrope because men are seen as natural leaders. So when they are assertive and they talk in a loud voice, that is okay. That is what is expected of them. When women and girls do it, it's like they talk too much, or, you know, they're too loud, or they get called all sorts of names, so they can't get away with it. Whereas with men, it is seen, it's accepted, right? And so this makes women shrink, and the girls not be as confident and assertive as they need to be. Whereas the boys get the platform to stand there with their chest out and be as loud as they want. And again, this is costing society because it costs the women and the girls to hide their light under a bushel. So another research showed that 73% of women have experienced some form of workplace microaggression. This is everyday sexism that they get, where you will have, and I actually had this with one of my colleagues where she was the vice president of IT, and one of the guys that worked for her, who was one of the technical architects, when they were being introduced at a conference, when they heard that the vice president of IT was there and she was standing next to this architect that worked for her, they just literally went and shook the male architect's hand, and assumed he was the vice president of IT. And I'm not sure what they thought she was. Maybe she was his PA or something. But those, again, the stereotypes and the microaggressions that women have to endure daily. So in a scenario where you find that maybe there is a meeting or a conversation and it turns into a heated debate, perhaps, and the woman or the female contributing to that debate, maybe she has her voice wobbles a bit, right? As the pressure comes on, next thing, she's labeled as emotional, and the man can keep going. Right? When something happens or when things get heated and the woman is labeled as emotional, too loud, whatever, the way to challenge it is to say, I think Tracy has got a valid point of view, and I think we should keep that discussion going. Again, you are creating the platform for that person and supporting her to get her voice out there. All right, so the next bias is affinity bias, and we can all identify with this, where we gravitate towards people like us and avoid people that aren't like us, or sometimes even dislike them because they don't look like us. And again, it's staggering the way this affects women. So another study where this was again in New York, where a major orchestra, they use blind auditions. So everybody's heard of The Voice, yeah? So you know about blind auditions where they couldn't see the singers. And the odds of the women making it past the first round improved by 50% because they couldn't see them. Whereas when you see people, if they don't look like you, they're not acting like you, then you don't have that affinity. So when somebody is different to you, in a scenario where you hear somebody say, why does she wear such awful clothes, right? You could say something like, she may be expressing her individuality through her clothes. And in the workplace, the example here is to steer the conversation back to the woman's talents, her skill set, rather than what she's wearing or the way she's wearing her hair. And then, so the last but not the least is intersectionality. And so this is where you have 2 or 3 biases come together. So if you are a woman, for example, and you are a Muslim, for example, yeah, and you happen to be Black, right? You have 3 things, 3 different points that you can be discriminated against. And research shows that people with 3 marginalized identities often feel they don't belong anywhere. And again, this is a loss to society because everybody has got something to contribute. Everybody is configured in their own unique way to be able to add something to society. So when we are marginalizing people and we are thinking that they are less than or other than, and not giving them the opportunities they deserve because of affinity bias, because they don't look like us, because we don't wear a scarf, they don't look like us, we think we can't identify, then those people again can't bring their talents to add to the talent pool. And this costs everybody. It costs society, it costs employers, and it costs individuals as well. So a scenario here is if somebody says, I'm surprised at how good her English is, simply because, I don't know, somebody's wearing a headscarf, you know, you can then go straight in. Why do you say that? And then it helps people to think, and it helps them to question their biases and take a step back. Otherwise, you know, people take this completely for granted. Now, I'm going to give you an example. So my son, I got two boys now. One is at university, and the one at university, when he was, I don't know, in junior school, perhaps, he was a bit of a quiet boy. He does talk a lot now, but he was a bit of a quiet boy to start with. And they had a new teacher, and so she didn't know their kids at all. Because he was a quiet boy, and because my son is mixed race, for some reason, she just assumed that English was not his first language. Do you know? And then, so basically, it meant that he was in a different stream. And the only issue was that he just couldn't be bothered to contribute in the conversation. It was a confidence issue. He needed to be pulled into the conversation. And so when we have these intersectionality and people are left to the side, the very thing that they need, the support, the thing to bolster them, is what gets marginalized out. And then before you know it, they're not being able to contribute to the world. In my son's case, I was able to go and say the only language he speaks is English. So that was that. that sorted that out. But in the workplace, we all do it. We all judge people just because of the way they look, the way they talk, or the way they don't talk. So that is how, by being able to challenge and say, why do you say that? We get to have an inclusive society, and everybody gets to contribute their talent. Now, last but not the least, I'm going to talk about how we're going to engage our allies, the men, and make them literally fight our cause for us. Because again, research shows that we make 96% progress when we include the men. And if we don't include the men, and the women and the girls go and fight this on their own, the improvement is only 30%. Why is that? Because again, the current environment that we're in, it is the men that are the power brokers. So if you go to the boardrooms, again, it is predominantly male. So if we don't include them, if we don't remind them that their daughters, their wives, their sisters, their mothers are women, they forget to help us with the fight. Now, to be fair to the men and the boys, there is a risk to them getting involved. And the risk is sometimes they are considered, both, believe it or not, by men and other women, they pay what they call the wimp penalty, where because they're now there fighting for women's issues, some people consider them as wimps or being too in touch with their feminine side or whatever. So that is the tax they have to pay, and a risk that they might not want to take. And then there's also the backlash and the resentment they get from other women and girls, because, you know, women have been in this arena for a long time, and then suddenly you have one male ally turns up, he's the male champion and gets all the attention. So you can understand why the other women and girls that have been doing this all along might not be too happy about this. So we have to be aware of the risk they face in terms of the backlash and the resentment when they put themselves out there for us. and minimize this risk for them. So we don't, give them a hard time if they use, a cliche like we're all in this together, when you're looking at a man and thinking, how can you possibly be in this together with me, right? We have to watch that and minimize that risk. And then there are 4 types of allies you can have. There's the clueless, as in, a man just turned up and he's like, what women's issue? So, and then you have those that are aware of it, but they're not doing anything with it. And then those that are aware but are active, active out there, and those that will go above and beyond, the advocates. And so what we want to do is turn the clueless into advocates for us. So the men and the boys listening to this talk, I hope that after this, you are all going to start being advocates for us, because we need you to literally triple the progress we can make. And also for the men and the boys, they need to know that they are accepted. So they're not going to have the resentment and the backlash that I talked about in terms of the risk, and that they have an important role to play. And of course, you have an important role to play, because once you come and join, you triple the outcome for us. So you definitely have an important role to play. And then also for the women and the girls is the support we can give the boys, again, to minimize the risk. So basically the support, meaning the training we can give them. So for the men and the boys, they need to know that they have to listen. They can't just step into the arena and start mansplaining to the women and the girls that have been in there. They need to sit back and listen, because there are certain things as a man you can never really understand unless you've been a woman or a girl. So you need to listen to the women and the girls whilst they explain things to you. And you also need to understand that it is not about you, the men. For the first time in your lives, perhaps, you're having to play the support role. You're having to be in second position, and you are supporting the women. So you have to allow them to occupy the limelight. You are there in a supporting capacity only. And then you also have to be prepared to be generous enough to share your social capital, as in open up your context to these women, mentor them, show them the masculine way of doing things, because the women will be well versed in the feminine way of doing things. And so it is your way to show them the other way, so they get comfortable, in being able to straddle both worlds. Okay, so now I'm going to leave you with this quote by Rosa Parks, who was a civil rights activist in the US. Each person must live their life as a model for others. So for the women in here, remember, although International Women's Day today is all about you, your job is to help other women. And remember, your life is a model for others. And so reach out to another woman that you admire today and let her know that. That is you bolstering up another human being. And for the boys and the men, you can also do the same. Let a woman that you admire today know that you admire her. It will really make her feel that, she is valued, and it will make her stronger to put her voice out in the world and to put her talents out in the world. But you are never too young to make an impact. Your life, think of it as a model for other lives, and always help speak out for others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Gifty. That was amazing, and a really powerful message to leave on, and a challenge to each and every one of you today. And I hope that you are sharing that and empowering each other today. Just as a reminder, if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, we're going to do a short question and answer session now. So if you are in a classroom at the moment, if you want to ask your teachers to fill out the Google form, which can be found on 1BA, and ask those questions to me, or if you are in a study period right now, then that has been emailed to you. And I've had a couple of questions through already, which is great. So I'm going to get started with those. So Gifty, we've got one from one of our year 12 students who's asked, what inspired you to be an author?
Oh my God. I have always wanted to be a speaker. Sorry, my phone. Let me just do this. All right, there's the music over. I have always wanted to be an author. I mean, I remember when I was as young as, oh my God, I can't even remember how young I was. I wrote a play script. And my father encouraged me to do that. And English literature was my favorite subject at school. And I always knew I was going to write a book. I just didn't know what I was going to write about and what topic. So I don't know what inspired me. I've always had it in me that I've got a voice and I wanted to put it out there. And the way to do that was to write.
Amazing. And I think there might be some students who have very similar point of view as well, who love English literature. So that's amazing to have that kind of inspiration for those students. I've got another one, which is asking, what advice would you give to women who want to progress in society?
So the women who want to progress in society, my advice to you is please be yourself. Please be yourself. Do not let anyone stop you. And do not be waiting for anybody to give you permission. The permission you need is the permission from yourself. You are just important. If you're waiting for permission, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life because other people are preoccupied with their own stuff. So please be yourself. Know that you have a voice. Know that you matter. And just go after what you want.
Amazing, thank you. And I've got one that's come through from Mr. Burnett's maths class, who's asked, who is your biggest inspiration?
Oh my God. So my biggest inspiration out of everything is this woman who I didn't know she was my biggest inspiration until I heard her speak. And she was the health minister of one of these African countries, and she was she had her pension, and she used her pension to build a hospital to help train midwives to go out and do outreach work in the villages because they had very high child mortality. But what made her inspire me was I don't know how many people would take their pension and use it to build a hospital. I heard her being interviewed on Radio 4 and I thought, oh my God, most people, when they reach that age, they just want to retire and put their slippers on and have a hot cup of cocoa and just relax. But there she was using her pension to build a hospital. And that really inspired me. And I thought, one day, I hope that I will be able to make such a selfless act that's going to impact on other human beings.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel inspired even by hearing you talk about her. So amazing person. I've got a question from Reese, who's asked, why is there not a International Men's Day or Men's Day for Equality?
There is.
Amazing. So there you go, Reese.
There is. So I am speaking at Tesco Bank this afternoon, and they've invited me to come and speak at their International Men's Day. I think it's in October or something. I forget the date, but there is one.
So there you go, Reese. We'll be celebrating that later in the year. So brilliant. I've had one come through from a science class, which have asked, what are your hobbies? What do you like getting involved with around your work?
I love reading. I can read until my eyeballs fell out because I just love information and learning new things all the time, because with life, there's always new information to be had. I love reading about the brain. I love neuroscience. So it's just constantly reading. I also love walking. I could again walk until my legs fell off. I've got 2 Labradors, and we take off at the weekends, and we can just go and go and go. I absolutely love walking, and I also love cooking, trying new recipes, weird and wonderful things, and mixing things up together. And sometimes what I come up with is inedible, but that's beside the point. It's just the fact of me being creative and adventurous in the kitchen with all that. So yeah, those are the things I love to do.
Amazing. And that's really nice to sort of hear that other side as well. I've got another question through from Jess, who has asked, in what ways do you think that women have advanced in society?
Well, so, I mean, okay, so you might not think it, but I'm 105 years old, I promise you. And when I started off my career, it was a completely different world then. So talking about advanced, so now we have flexible working, and when, you know, organizations have such packages, I forget one of the consulting companies now, where after maternity leave, when you go back, they expect you to work a 4-day week, not a 5-day week. So you can have 1 day to spend with your new baby, and you get full pay. Those things weren't even about when I was having my children 20 years ago. So it's changed a lot in terms of the flexibility in the workplace. It also changed a lot in terms of the visibility, because now most workplaces have a diversity and inclusion champion, which makes sure the women and other minorities are included at the table. And organizations are judged on their D&I policies. I mean, one of the, like I said, I'm speaking at Tesco Bank this afternoon, and as a supplier, I had to show them my D&I policy. This is the sort of thing they're asking for now. So it's really changing a lot now in the world in terms of the visibility for women and what we can do. So, and it is up to us, of course, to keep going. It's changing, is nowhere near where it needs to be, because 99.5 years is unacceptable. And you girls and boys are going to be the ones that make us break parity before the 100-year mark.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And that is all we've got time for in terms of questions. But Gifty, a huge thank you from all of our students here and everyone at Bexleyheath Academy. It has been amazing to have you join us today, and we really appreciate it. So a big thank you from all of us. And I know that you will have inspired lots of our students today, and that challenge that Gifty gave you at the end, please make sure you are doing that today in as many ways as you can. And if you want to find out more about the work that Gifty does, then you've got your own website, and I'm sure students will have a little look at that as well, which would be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much for having me, for giving me the opportunity to speak at the school. You were my first, so there you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and a happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Thank you.